Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, we have Mr. Jeff Charles, host of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. That is a podcast. And we're going to chop it up about left-leaning policies, right-leaning policies, and how they impact primarily Black America. Mr. Charles, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, brother. If you would, I don't want to presume what you know or believe about left-leaning versus right-leaning policies in America. So give us your sentiment and I will opine.
You know, when it comes to the Black community, it's kind of hard to say. Because you have policies at the federal level, right, presidential level, but the vast majority of cities that are predominantly populated by Black people are run by Democrats, so they tend to be under more progressive left-leaning policies. I think overall, a lot of those policies haven't done very much for the Black community. These cities have been under Democrat control for decades, and you don't see much of a change in the standard of living. When it comes to conservative policies or right-leaning policies, I think that there is more room for benefit. We saw how Black people did under former President Donald Trump. Regardless of what you believe about him, Black people did fare better. When it comes to education, school choice, in areas where it has been implemented, has had a very big and positive impact on the Black community. So I would say, at least in those two areas, when you're looking at right-leaning policies, when they're carried out the right way, they do have a net positive impact for the Black community.
All right, it's good you feel that way, but that's untrue. And so I'm going to lay out some actual facts to you and let you deal with these facts, okay? So there was a survey, and the survey looked at left-leaning policies, compared them to right-leaning policies over a period of 30 years of respective leadership. What the survey found is that under Democratic policies, Black families' incomes grew an average of $895 annually, but only grew by $142 annually under Republican policies.
Are we talking at the federal level or at the local?
No, we're talking about, I'm talking about national numbers. So this is a national survey, and I'm gonna read the national numbers. Then I get into some granular data too.
Okay.
All right, but only grew $142 nationally under Republicans. The Black unemployment rate fell by a net of 7.9% across 26 years of Democratic leadership, but it actually went up 13.7% during 26 years of Republican presidencies. Across the years of Democratic leadership, Black poverty declined by a net of 23.6%, but it actually grew. Poverty in the Black community has grown 3% under Republican presidents. Now, you talked about the economic or the employment prowess of the policies associated with Donald Trump. So let me provide some clarity to that. Do you know what system Trump used in order to promote his unemployment numbers?
When you say system, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so.
All right, so the numbers that when you say, Black people did well as far as employment under Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump used what's called a U3 rating system. I want you to look this up when you get a moment. The U3 rating system only rates technical employment per 30 days of the survey model, which means if you work 1 hour in that 30-day survey, Donald Trump would count that as employment. The real rating system is a U6 rating system that he did not use. The U6 rating system provides contextualization to the numbers such as contract work, seasonal work, etc. Under the U6 rating system, Black unemployment and underemployment was over 20%. But he utilized the U3 rating system so he could only talk about technical employment of Black folk. Here's the other number they don't talk about. The household median income of Black families dropped by $500 to $800 under Donald Trump. So you literally have more Black people with technical connection to employment making less money overall. The third number they don't tell you about is the equal work for equal pay as it relates to people of color. Under the Obama administration, Black people were starting to earn 70, 75, 80 cents on the dollar of what their white counterparts in a similar job or same job would earn. Under Donald Trump, that number then dropped back down to 67 cents on the dollar because he told his Department of Justice to not prosecute these discriminatory suits by way of the federal government to enforce workplace policy. They had a real cause and effect relationship to where now black people are getting paid less money. They have more technical employment, but they're not able to pay the bills. So, brother, what I just laid out to you, none of those are my feelings. All of those are facts.
Well, when you're talking about U3 and U6, I will look that up and see what it is to which you were referring. All I know is that when I've read other reports on it, I've seen that black income did go up under Trump. Now, I'm sure that none of this was perfect. No policy is perfect, but the bottom line is wages did go up for the black community, and the unemployment rate did get a lot better. Now, it was already on a downward track before Trump took over. But after he took over, that downward trend as far as unemployment, it accelerated as wages rose. Now, maybe when I have time to actually look at the U3 and U6, maybe we can have another conversation about this. I can't speak to that because I haven't actually read it myself. Okay. But when it comes to the reports that I've seen, report after report, even from left-leaning news sources, I am seeing that things did get better economically for the black community.
But wait a minute, brother. Come on, man. You can't say things got better economically for the black community when black people statistically earned less on the dollar than they did from under the Obama administration, and they had a lower household median income than they did before Trump got in, right? They had a lower household median income when Trump was president. Here's the other element that I think sometimes gets confused in the conversation of left-leaning policies versus right-leaning policies. First of all, they both get it wrong. All right, I don't feel left-leaning policies go far enough, and I don't think right-leaning policies are even in the ballpark, okay? But let's talk about one of the greatest ways to overcome generational poverty that still exists in America. Education, technical education included. That's one of the greatest ways to break generational poverty. Well, under Republican administrations, they tend to defund these programs by a tune of 50 to 80% depending on the region, while Democrats will properly fund, at least to the tune that's appropriate, still not to the tune that I think is perfect. But they will actually fund these particular programs that become catalysts to actual jobs in the marketplace, while Republicans would defund those programs at the same time in the same position. So tell me, brother, how was that a win for black people when those on the right would defund those programs that we both agree can actually end generational poverty?
I'm glad that you brought that up. The bottom line is, especially at the federal level, we throw a lot of money at schools, especially schools in inner city communities where a lot of black and brown kids get their education. However, we've seen that money being thrown and thrown and thrown, and yet there isn't much of a change.
Well, brother, I'm not talking about, in all due respect. Hold on, brother. I need to make a clarity here. You're answering a question that I did not answer. I'm not talking about K through 12 education. I'm specifically referring to higher education, technical training programs, college, etc. Those are the programs, Upward Bound, Educational Talent Search, Workforce, WorkSource. Those programs that allow adult individuals who come from historically marginalized communities to be able to go to welding school, to go to truck driving school, to go to AC repair, to go to college. Republicans historically defund those programs, while Democrats increase the funding of those programs typically.
So then the question I would have, because I thought we were talking K through 12 schools, so that's what I kind of boned up on. I didn't bone up on higher education, but then again,
but we never said in any of our notes that we're talking about K through 12 education, brother. All due respect.
Right, no, that's fine, that's fine. It's just usually when we have these conversations, we're talking about K through 12 when I've had other conversations. But if you're talking about higher learning, I would need to see that under Democratic rule, if they did fund those programs, that things actually got better, that we had more black graduates. I would need to see the numbers.
Black graduation increases. The record for black graduation was actually when President Obama was in office. You had a record black graduation rate in the United States. Are you gonna give Democrats or the brother any credit? I mean, you're talking about the numbers, brother. You can always research my numbers, fact check them, but you have
a boom fact check your numbers
in African American graduation.
And I'll say, if it turns out that Obama funding those programs actually resulted in higher graduation rates, I'll give them props. I have no problem giving somebody on the other side props if they actually.
Can I ask you about HBCUs in particular?
Sure, I mean, when it comes to HBCUs, I mean, we saw what happened under the Trump administration. He provided a lot more funding for HBCUs. I know that the reason that they had last year that Biden was championing, they slashed a lot of that.
Yeah, that is correct. So
I know you had a problem with that.
100%, brother. I said it on this show and my radio show.
Yep.
Biden is no friend to HBCUs. I have no idea how you got a whole vice president with the whole damn HBCU degree and you let them chump you off on the budget like that. I don't understand that. I stood against it. Also, under Trump, which was the great fake out, he had this meeting with all these HBCU presidents and promised he would give them record funding. He never did that. He only renewed the funding as existed. He did not give them a record increase. That's number one. Number two, he then turned around and defunded educational talent search. He defunded the federal TRIO program, which is utilized for HBCUs, and it's called Upward Bound and ETS in the budget line. Those are programs that I benefited from because they are targeted for historically marginalized communities and first generation college students. Well, Trump turned around and defunded that program. We had to fight to get some of the money back, while at the same time he's saying that he's going to give HBCUs more money than they have ever had. Lies, lies, lies. It was the talking point. You look under the hood of the car, brother, the engine don't match the make and model.
You know, Trump does exaggerate, he uses a lot of hyperbole, but the fact is, he still kept the funding going. He didn't make a promise saying, I'm gonna give you this much money, and then just like you said, we both agree with Biden, slash it later. So I mean, this is something where I think
but Trump did do that, brother. Listen, man, I get it, but here's what I'm challenging you to do. You see how I just called out Biden, had no problem doing that? That's because I'm free, brother. I'm free, all right? Trump did a very similar move.
Programs that you say he did, and I'll criticize him for that too.
Yeah, Trump did a very similar move. He also, a lot of people bring up, well, Trump and his first step program, which was really a graduation of Obama's program. Okay, the problem with that program, when people say, well, that was his criminal justice reform, the problem with that program is that he only allowed it to apply to less than 1% of the prison population. Number one. Number two, he then turned around and defunded the very re-entry programs and halfway houses necessary for these men and women to be productive and to be reunified to functional society. So he takes that money away, he takes that funding away while screaming he's a reformist for prison reform. Come on, man. Like you gotta see between the lines with this stuff.
I would have loved to have seen more done with the First Step Act.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure Democrats did. There were Republicans who did too. A lot of Democrats were on board with it, but I'm always gonna want more criminal justice reform. So I don't necessarily disagree with you there. To me, I took it as what they said it was, the first step. I mean, we had it under Obama. We didn't. I mean, you said it was a continuation. They weren't able to get it past then. Maybe they would have gotten more when they passed it.
Well, they had a version of it. It didn't go far enough. To the credit of President Obama, he did restore the federal Pell Grant under his limited powers through executive order. He made it a pilot program. We need to restore the Pell Grant for prisoners because we all know that education is the greatest deterrent.
I wouldn't have any problem with that.
All right, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.